So what's going on, everybody? My name is the Arkham Reaper, and today we have a video theorizing about all of our quotes from Drostan, explaining his history with the island in the Darkest Shore and the history behind it and what he knows that the other characters do not. So, full disclosure going into this, I tried to do so much research into every particular quote that Drostan has, into specifically like what he's talking about and what he may be referencing, to try and give it more factual historical backing and stuff like that, because that seems to be the idea that Sledgehammer is going for, is trying to use historical backing to try and put more information into this and give the story a lot of depth and large amounts of like width and all that good stuff. And to go along with that, there isn't a whole lot, so I just wanted to point out that I tried and didn't very well succeed. So we're going to go over every single one of the quotes that Drostan has and, kind of the discussion matter that goes on between every single one of the characters. I'm not going to read every quote, but I'm going to put in the audio that we data mined and the link to the Reddit post in the description below. I'm also going to link Radawson27's video, in which he goes to about round 30 plus to try and get all these quotes just in game with a bunch of friends and supporters of his. Again, links are always going to be in the description below, and let's get into it. So first off, I'm going to just play the audio that we got from the Reddit post / data mining and so on. Have a listen.
Once again, our dear leader has accidentally sent us into hell.
I saw the intel that Rideau had. There was no other choice. Nobody else knows Straub's patterns. We were the only option here.
It was foolish to send us into the lion's den so soon after what we've been through.
Rideau was smart. He went around Middleburg instead of into it like we did. You think we would have learned after our last mission?
You hate this place, Drostan. What happened here?
I don't want to talk about this place. It was another time, another life.
Man wants to keep his secrets.
Those secrets might be the key to getting off this damn island.
Talk to us, man. Anything you know might help.
Oh, so we're going to have ourselves a little heart-to-heart then? All cards on the table? All right then, who's going first? Eh? Eh? Yeah, I didn't think so.
Fine. I'll talk. I'll play your little game. I manipulated the OSS. I manipulated the Monument's men and convinced Rideau to send us on our last mission. I did it to save my brother. I do not regret this. I got to see him. One last time.
This is no secret, Marie. Myself, I've been with La Résistance since the Germans stained Le Louvre with blood. My father's blood. Since that time, I've killed men in ways that would make you weep. I've tortured men long past the time when it was expedient, and I would do it again.
I'm a soldier. I've killed those put in front of me because I was given an order. I like to think that I did this for America, for freedom, all of that. But I still see their faces at night when I try to sleep.
Whoa, you're a sick lot. Whew! Bastards, every one of you.
Still, there's something you're not telling us.
Yeah, no more secrets. This place is wrong. I can feel it. Bad things happen here.
The time for discretion is long past, Scotsman. What do you know?
Fine. You all confess to the priest, so I'll be straight with you. You see, I've been here before.
We know that part.
Yeah, well, I was here at the request of our dear doctor's boss.
Himmler? You son of a bitch! You worked for the Nazis?
Now, just hold on, mate. This was before anybody knew what Hitler and his boys were up to. I was a history professor specialising in early medieval art. Himmler offered me a pretty pot to sail out here and muck out in the tunnels. Things were tight at the time, so I took the job. I didn't know I'd be working for ghouls.
So why did the Nazis want you here?
They wanted my perspective. We're looking for something from the Middle Ages. Something carried by one of the knights from the Crusades. And no, they never once mentioned Barbarossa or his fucking sword or bringing the dead back to life.
Why is that?
Yeah, well, there's more on this island than the Nazis are aware of, you see. History. It's like those damn soldiers. Won't stay dead.
You're being mysterious again.
Right, well, as I was saying earlier before it all went tits up, this island has got some history, and not the good kind of history, not the knights in shining armour. I'm talking about the darkest parts of the Dark Ages.
Why didn't you tell us? You never mentioned any of this back in the village.
None of us knew what was happening in that damn village, remember? It was not a place for quiet reflection. I've just barely begun piecing this all together.
You could have said something.
Like what? That these Nazi bastards have a sick interest in the occult? It's hardly front-page news.
So why didn't you mention anything before?
I did to Rideau. He knew and told me to keep it to myself. Said he didn't want the team jumping to conclusions before we knew more.
Before we knew more? I'm gonna have to talk with Hank. So what did you find?
I found a lot of bones, carvings from the 1st century AD from the Germanic tribes.
So Himmler wasn't happy with your work here?
It wasn't my fault. I can only dig up what's been buried, mate. What, I'm supposed to pull mummified knights out my arse?
You didn't find anything from Barbarossa? No medieval knights?
Not a hair. Found some nice pottery from the era, an urn filled with scrolls, great museum pieces, some decent resale value, but not what Himmler was searching for.
You robbed from your own dig site. You stole art. Isn't that what we're fighting against here?
Keep your wig on. I stole from Nazis, which is what we're doing now, and I sold the scrolls to a museum, to the common folk. Would you talk this way to Robin Hood?
You're not Robin Hood.
True. Robin Hood wouldn't have kept the prettiest scroll for himself.
Why did you keep the scroll? I thought you were in this for the money.
A man who loves his work whistles with the sunrise. That's what Granny used to say. See, I'm not some grubby pickpocket. I'm an active appreciator of the arts. And this scroll is a lovely piece of work.
What did the scroll say?
Scribbles and ravings, mostly. Diary of a loony, a mad monk. He ended up talking to rocks. Needless to say, Herr Himmler was not impressed.
You couldn't get the Nazis what they wanted. I don't guess they were happy with that.
Oh, I saw how the wind was blowing. They booked me a passage to this island, but I didn't have a ticket home.
Come on now, Himmler's smarter than that. I've studied the man. He's insane. But he wasn't going to ship a Scottish professor out to Germany just to shoot him.
Oh, I agree with you, love, but accidents happen all the time at sea. Our dear Nazi friend wouldn't be above putting a bullet in my head and then dumping me overboard. Might even save a few quid doing so. Yeah. So I put an extensive fortnight dig into the calendars and then booked my own passage out on a fishing boat that evening.
Hard to believe they just let you slip out so easily.
Wasn't easy, especially the part where I pocketed my finds.
You stole some scrolls from Himmler and made a quick buck in the process. I'm impressed. Doesn't really help us here, does it?
Not really, that's why I kept it to myself, but I've been thinking, this island is crawling with tunnels, caves and hidden alcoves, plenty of spots to hide away your secret.
You still have it?
Wonderful illustration by our mad monk, a really twisted drawing, very Hieronymus Bosch. Pools of blood, fiery swords, the fanatical daydreams of a lonely tosspot.
Alright, so that was some pretty great audio, about 6 to 7 minutes of audio quotes, and so we're just going to, I'm basing everything that I'm reading off of the transcript from the Reddit post here, so if it's a little bit out of order from the actual audio, do forgive that. I'm honestly just trying to read off specifically and paraphrase, just because I have peeled over the audio quotes quite a decent amount, and I know the ones that are important, but I want to go through as many of them as possible, even if they have a little bit less significance, but I want to make sure I don't get quotes wrong or my paraphrasing wrong. So the first about handful or so, that's not descriptive at all, but the first four are basically restating what goes on in the intro cutscene. So do the following like 4 or so, basically up until we get the more character development where Marie starts to talk about her confession, I guess. Up until we really get to that quote, there isn't a whole lot going on apart from Drostan, challenging everybody to give a little confession. Marie's confession is literally just telling us everything we already knew from the Final Reichs cutscenes and so on. Olivia's is just saying that she joined the resistance as soon as the Germans took over and killed her father in Paris, and that she's tortured people and done a lot of really, really kind of dark things. Jefferson's is very much about him still having PTSD from all the people that he's killed, in the sense that he still sees their faces when he tries to sleep. Drostan having a few funny little quips at them, and then his first bombshell is saying that he was at the island under the request of Dr. Straub's boss, aka Heinrich Himmler, and then Marie kind of losing her shit about it. And the only thing to come out of the quote right after that from Drostan that we need to really kind of focus on is the fact that this was at a time when nobody knew what Hitler and his boys were up to, by definition, of course. And just implementing and saying that he was a history professor specializing in early medieval arts, that Himmler offered him a boatload of money. He needed the money, so he took it. Carrying on from there, Olivia and Drostan kind of going back and forth, being like, Olivia saying, why didn't you tell us anything about this? And Drostan being like, what the hell am I supposed to say? And then we get to Jefferson in his nice, calm, collected voice being like, tell us anything and may help. And then Drostan being like, well, as I was saying before, everything went tits up. This island's got history. It's not good history. It's not, and this is the actual quote, not the knights in shining armor. I'm talking about the darkest parts of the Dark Ages. So that implication is kind of vague, just because of, if you are actually researching the Dark Ages, it's only considered the Dark Ages for Europe, because that's the only, part of the world, I guess, it was cared about at the time. And just implicating the Dark Ages is just to say that because right after this was the period of Enlightenment, the Renaissance, those kinds of things. And basically, the Dark Ages was just a lot of wars and fighting within the numerous crusades that happened, and so on and so forth. So, we will then move on from that. There isn't really a whole lot to go into about that. Jefferson asks, why did the Nazis want Drostan here? Drostan said, they wanted my perspective. They were looking for something from the Middle Ages, something carried by knights from the Crusades, and no, they never once mentioned Barbarossa or his fucking sword or bringing the dead back to life. Now, the implications that come with that is that, okay, they never mentioned to him specifically anything about Barbarossa or his sword or that legend, obviously, or, zombies. Makes sense. But they were looking for something carried by the knights from the Crusades. Now, if you do research into trying to figure out things that were brought back by any knights from the Crusades, you either get something really vague, like they brought back gold, silver, and jewels, and ideas and, trade and stuff, or you go into conspiracy theory territory that we all know and love from typically Knights Templar stuff, where it's like, oh, they brought back the Ark of the Covenant, the spear that pierced Jesus' side, the Holy Grail, the Holy Mantra, those kinds of things that are religious artifacts from Christianity or, Judaism, that were supposedly supposed to be kept in Solomon's temple. There's not a whole lot that is explicitly described in this quote or in any of the quotes here about what the Nazis were looking for. It's pretty fair to assume that Sledgehammer may be going in the route of like Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of thing, or maybe even like the spear that pierced Jesus' side. One direction I could see them taking is that in the next DLC, we will actually take a side kind of detouring to our original fetch quest of trying to find all this stuff for Barbarossa's sword, and maybe go to, because we're going to probably more than likely Berlin, and apparently, the Fuhrer's in danger and stuff like that. and maybe Straub is going to go there to initially save Eve the Fuhrer, but then Hitler still dies, and then Straub carries on the his own, for lack of a better term, crusade to kind of still win Germany the war. So they'll alter history a little bit in this sense. And he will go on to try and use Hitler's private collection of possibly things that may have already been found before the events of World War II Zombies occur. So maybe the spear, maybe the differing things from the Crusades. And that will be used later in possibly DLC 4. Because the way I said this in my last video, and the way I see it is I feel like in DLC 4, someone somewhere is going to basically put together Barbarossa's sword. Barbarossa is going to rise, or someone somewhere is going to use this sword to basically try and end the world. And then the idea that I'm going to work off of in that sense is that maybe be it Straub using that or Barbarossa using that after he rises again, and then we have to use, say, the spear that pierced Jesus' side or the Ark of the Covenant or something like that to counter that and actually be able to have something that can, harm somebody with a godlike sword in the story's context. Excuse me. Carrying on from there, we don't have much after that. It's just Marie being like, why didn't you mention anything? And then Drostan kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, snitching on Rudeau and saying that he knew and told me to keep it to myself so that way you guys didn't jump to conclusions. And it's probably just due to the fact of that there's not a whole lot there to begin with, apart from like some of the things that he says later. But in general, there's not a whole lot to be gotten from that, so I kind of see why Rudeau did that, and he's like, just keep it to yourself, because there's no real useful information. And later on in the quotes, the other characters kind of realize that. They're like, this doesn't help us at all. And it's like, exactly, that's why I wanted to keep it to myself. But, carrying on from there, they asked what he found. He said, I found a lot of bones, carvings from the 1st century AD from a Germanic tribe. Now, I can't tell you how annoyed I got from this quote, because I was like, this quote, this is the one that's gonna matter, okay? This is the one, okay? This is the one, right? I really wanted this quote to be the one that was going outside of what the face value of it was. Like, one can instantly assume just from having been somebody that played the map, you can just be like, well, the carvings and things that he's talking about were probably from the ancient room that we find during the Easter egg and stuff, right? But I so wanted it to be something else, or maybe something that we will actually never physically see a manifestation of in the map, but something, somewhere else or something like that. Or maybe we will find it doing a no clip. I don't know. I don't know. Rad Austin 27, looking at you, man. I want to see a no clipping series about this. I do. If you don't, well, I might try really hard to find a way to do it. But I digress. I tried for hours last night, all night. I was up till 5 a.m. trying to find stuff about specific things brought back from the Crusade that weren't conspiracy theory-ish, and stuff to do with 1st century AD Germanic tribes within the North Sea. But do you know how hard it is to find one that's specifically just in Heligoland, or in general, to find a specific 1st century AD Germanic tribe? God, that was a piss off. Anyways, digress, carrying on. Olivia being like, you didn't find anything from Barbarossa, no medieval knights, and then Drostan saying, not a hair, found some nice pottery from the era, so I'm assuming from the Crusade era is what he's probably referencing there. An urn filled with scrolls, probably, argue that it could be something like extra Dead Sea Scrolls that we had no idea about. But what he later says is not in this quote, but in later quotes. He just kind of implies that it's stuff from a mad monk, which my assumption about that is just that's the monk that we get the head of from the Easter egg as well. And again, with the monk, I'm assuming that monk is just a priest of Nerthus. So carrying on from there, we're going to just kind of keep talking here about everything that's going on. Some great museum pieces, not some great resale value, not what Himmler was searching for. Olivia losing her mind about him stealing, and then he's like, I was stealing from Nazis. Like, what are you on about? And then Drostan being like, I'm an active appreciator of the arts. And then them, like, I'm just kind of trying to get through these just so that way we're not reading every single quote that you've already now heard. Drostan talking about scribbles and ravings, mostly Diary of a Loony, a mad monk. He ended up talking to rocks. Himmler was not impressed. So obviously Himmler's probably not all that impressed by this because he probably also, just like Drostan, probably doesn't understand the implications of what this monk is talking about and who this monk could have been. And again, I don't have a factual basis for this being like, yeah, this monk is obvious. The monk reference is obviously a monk of Nerthus. But that's my assumption, and I feel like that's probably the assumption that most of the community would come to after hearing that quote as well. Carrying on from there, he just says that he can only dig up what's buried, and talking about the fact that he escaped, and then that the only other real quote that we really need to kind of focus on, I think, is the fact that Drostan talking about, that's why I kept it to myself, because they were like, yeah, you found some things, made some money, I'm impressed, but it doesn't really help us. And he's like, not really, that's why I kept it to myself. But I've been thinking, this island is crawling with tunnels, caves, and many alcoves. Plenty of spots to hide away your secret. And then he's asked about the more prettiest or nicest scroll and whether or not he still has it, and he says it's a wonderful little illustration by our mad monk, a really twisted drawing, various erroneous bosh, which is apparently, I'm told, a artist that's decently famous from that relative era of the Middle Ages, I believe, if I remember correctly. It is in the Reddit post comments here. And then he just says, fields of blood, fiery swords, the fanatical dreams of a lonely tosspot. And then they ask why this isn't how it works in the actual audio recording, but they're talking about, but Drostan just referencing the fact that there's more to the island than the Nazis were aware of, and it's history that just won't stay dead. There's not a whole lot of implications that come from a lot of what he says, apart from, in general, the fact that he worked for the Nazis, what the Nazis were looking for, that he couldn't find anything about it, but that this mad monk that, like I said, is likely the monk's head that we find, and is also probably a servant of Nerthus, and his talkings and ravings about what seems to be, with the description of fields of blood, fiery swords, and fanatical daydreams, and a different quote that isn't in this, but is the quote that where Drostan talks about the fact that the island is used by pagans and various other medieval fanatics, and now the Nazis, shady people doing their shady deals. for however long, something along those lines. I'm very much paraphrasing, but it's very similar. I know that because I've heard it a bunch, but it just kind of is implicating that it seems as though this monk is aware of kind of like a apocalypse kind of situation, which kind of adds more credence to my theory about the possibilities of what might happen for a DLC 4. It could happen earlier than DLC 4, but it wouldn't make sense for trying to close out the season, right? But yeah, guys, that's basically the most that we're going to really get out of this, just because of the fact that there isn't a whole lot implicated by these quotes all that well here. There's some that implicate some things, but there isn't a whole lot that we can dig up specifically to be like, oh, this is possibly leading to this. Like, we don't have a whole lot of historical stuff that, you know, mainly points to anything of real notice. This does close out the kind of scenario of people wondering what his implications were within this island and why he doesn't like it here. It's mainly the same reason that nobody else likes it on that island from this crew, is that it's fucking creepy and gives off a really, really kind of dark kind of vibe. But it's also because of the fact that he almost lost his life there, because of the fact that the Nazis were probably going to kill him. But yeah, guys, that's going to wrap it up for the most part from this video. There isn't a whole lot else I can really say or really theorize about here. There's a lot of implications and there's a lot of vague stuff that we can definitely theorize about, but there isn't a whole lot that we can specifically say with a historical backing of definitely this is heading towards this from these quotes. Like I said, we can get kind of sort of into the realms of the conspiracy theories of what Crusader Knights brought back from the Crusades, but that only takes us so far and only gives us so much kind of information, even if we're gonna go those routes. But I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about these quotes down in the description. That doesn't even make sense to me. Down in the comments below, and be sure to leave a like. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Dislike if you like as well. It's really up to you, but I want to know what you guys think. I want to have a discussion about it. If you don't want to have an actual YouTube and you just can't comment, tweet me. All that good stuff. Let me know what you think about it. I've been the Arkham Reaper. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day or night.